Morning, folks. Hope you're having a good morning. Thought I'd rant a little bit more about another instance of something I find rather interesting, a possible, and I think quite likely, conscious reuse of musical material by composers. And last time I spoke on this or similar subjects, I was referring to Bus und Roy, that marvelous aria with the obbligato flute duet from the St. Matthew Passion of Bach. And I want to focus today a little bit on another set of pieces by Bach that I think could arguably be thought of as possibly consciously reused, particular musical, harmonic and melodic, various other types of musical items to reused again, largely due to the expressive similarities between at least two, possibly three texts that Bach set. And I'm referring to something that I've alluded to in a couple of other of my videos, and those being the cantatas of the Purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Two movements from two of those cantatas, both written in the same year. And also another one from the marvelous work, the St. Matthew Passion, which, as I recall, I think it was written at about the same time as these two pieces that ultimately ended up as being part of the cycle of purification cantata movements. Okay, specifically, I want to talk particularly about the arias Ich habe genug from the cantata BWV 82. By the way, BWV, in case people don't know what that means, is Bach's Verzeichnis, Werkeverzeichnis. Basically, that's the German term for Bach's catalog number 82. That was one of his somebody made a thematic catalog. Bach's Werkeverzeichnis, Bach's work catalog number 82, and also another one, BWV 157. I have 157, 152. I can't quite recall which it is, but also one of a cantata that eventually became part of the collection of purification cantatas, and Ich lasse dich nicht, du segnest mich, denn, or I'll not let you go until you bless me. And Ich habe genug is also from it can literally be translated as I have enough or it is enough. Okay, and I want to look at those two things, and also a video, not a video, but an aria from the St. Matthew Passion titled Erbarme, dich, which literally means forgiveness. Forgive me, Lord. Please forgive me. All right, so those are the three that I sort of want to focus on today. And I want to talk a little bit first about the two arias from the Purification Cantata cycle. Ich halte, or Ich lasse dich nicht, du segnest mich, denn, that cantata was I think written first by Bach in 1727. And it originally was a funeral cantata for, I think it was some kind of nobleman and local nobleman. I can't quite remember what it is, but it was written originally as a funeral cantata. And the particular piece that I'm thinking of is the second movement, scored for tenor, oboe d'amore, and continuo. And it's ich halte meinen Jesum feste, ich lasse ihn nun und ewig nicht. And what that translate or can be translated as, I hold fast to my Jesus, I will never let go. Essentially like that. And the aria that it's the first aria from Ich habe genug. And there's a Ich habe genug, ich habe den Heiland, das Hoffen der Frommen, auf meine begierigen Arme genommen. And that can be translated, I have held the Savior, the hope of the Gentiles, in my arms. Ich habe, it is enough. So those basically are the sort of the two texts that are and basic English translations of those passages. The purification is a sort of other important context to have, is that the purification ceremony happened after every child was born in. There's pardon my mumbling. That there's as part of the purification as well as the presentation ceremony, it was common custom, according to Levitical law, that every child, I think it's every firstborn son, at least, possibly every child, it was presented to the priests at the temple. And as part of this is part of Old Testament law and Old Testament readings. You can look it up. I think it's in Leviticus or something like that. Other biblical scholars can get it better than me. But basically what happened was that Mary and Joseph took Jesus just after he was born. I think it was 80 days after he was born, to the temple to be presented to the chief priest, to the priests. And while they were there, two prophets, a prophet and a prophetess, Simeon and Anna, were in the temple at the time of Mary and Joseph bringing Jesus to be presented at the temple. And Simeon was promised by God that he would not die until he'd seen the Savior. And when Simeon, the tradition holds, when Simeon spotted Jesus at the temple, he went over to him, picked him up in his arms, and essentially said an equivalent to what sent in Ich habe genug. Basically, I've held. Lord, let us now thy part. This is the famous Nunc Dimittis. Lord, let us now thy servant depart in peace, for mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which shall serve as a light to a bunch of people and serve as a light to all peoples, essentially. And I'm not getting that absolutely correctly, but that's essentially what happens. And he also says a couple things to Mary about Jesus sort of being a spear piercing her own heart, which of course prophesies what happens at the crucifixion after Jesus dies, the stabbing of the heart. And also a prophetess named Anna was also there at the temple when Jesus was presented, and she was also there. So it's the central point of the matter, at least for the expressive, affective bit of the cantata, is the symbol of someone taking the child Jesus up into his arms or her arms and embracing him. And so, ich halte meinen Jesum feste, I hold fast to my Jesus, and ich habe den Heiland, das Hoffen geflohen, auf meine begierigen Arme genommen. I've taken the Savior up into my arms. And that's the basic, sort of the basic dramatic, and I think expressive thing that Bach was responding to. And it's really interesting that not only, as I said before, I think I said before, in Ich halte meinen Jesum feste is scored for solo voice, a tenor, a double reed instrument, obbligato, the oboe d'amore, and basso continuo. And it's also very interesting to note that that same basic ensemble type, ensemble aggregation in Ich habe genug is also used, because there's an oboe, there is a solo bass singer this time, and also a string orchestra and continuo. So that they have very, very, very similar orchestrations. But also really interesting is the fact that both of those arias make prominent use of the Neapolitan sixth chord. The Neapolitan sixth chord is very interesting in both of those. It's very, very prominent. And for those of you who don't know what a Neapolitan sixth chord, basically what it is a major triad built on the lowered second scale degree of the scale. So if you're thinking like in C major, then the lowered second scale degree, of course, is D flat, right? A D flat major triad, usually found in first inversion and harmonized along these lines, in a way along these lines. I can do that again a little bit better. Here's Neapolitan 6, and this goes to a 5/7 to a 1. Right? So it's that Neapolitan 6 is also very, 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 very prominent in both of those. So double reed, obbligato, solo voice, basso continuo, very, very, very similar lyrics of embracing someone, or embracing the Savior, and using the Neapolitan sixth. So I think that's really that's quite interesting, especially when you consider that Ich habe genug and ich lasse dich, nicht, du segnest mich, denn, the title of the cantata out of which Ich lasse dich nicht, ich halte meinen Jesum feste, were both written at about the same time. So I think that, and again, I can't prove this, but I kind of suspect that maybe Bach might consciously have made the decision, because of the textual similarities between the lyrics that he was setting. He might have thought to himself, okay, well, why not use sort of a variation of the same orchestration, since the texts are so closely related. So, and again, I can't prove this, but I kind of get the feeling that that might be at least plausible. And again, even if it is, it's nevertheless, I think, a fascinating possible reuse of musical material based on sort of a creative decision to use that similar texts, similar ensemble. So I think that's rather interesting. Now, the other one that I want to talk a little bit about, and I'll leave links to recordings of each of these in the description after this video is over. And again, pardon my stammering, but that's sort of part and parcel of a lecture from me. Is the Erbarme, dich aria from the marvelous, so many composition lessons in this one set of pieces, the St. Matthew Passion, which again talks about forgiving someone, the alto singer that this time, with a string orchestra, and this time a string obbligato, talks very similarly about forgive me, Lord, for my sins, etc., etc. And it's interesting that sometimes during acts of forgivenesses, the forgiver and forgivee, sometimes as a sign of this, sometimes will embrace. So, and this again is a very, 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 very interesting and written, if I'm roughly, I think around the same time as in 1727 as the other two movements I've been talking about, and they're very similar. An obligato instrument, solo voice with either string orchestra or continual accompaniment, and prominent use of the Neapolitan sixth. Really rather fascinating, and I would not be the least bit surprised if Bach hadn't consciously made the decision, because of the textual affinities, to use a similar kind of, to write a similar kind of music for these movements. Just three incredibly beautiful and marvelous, marvelous settings. I think, and I think quite interesting. Anyway, that's sort of another one of my rants about, and this will again continue about all sort of things that I've sort of thought about and kind of have as sort of models, or sort of kinds of things that I like to try to think about and get some and derive some of my compositional habits and ideas from. The other thing, the other thing that I just got to mention, the other thing that I've just got to mention is that inasmuch as Bach died a long, long, long time before Vincent Kennedy McMahon hit the scene, I am convinced that that Bach might well have been, if he'd been around for this, might have gotten into pro wrestling because of the fact that ich lasse dich nicht, du segnest mich, denn, or I will not let you go until you bless me. It's the title of the earliest of the funeral cantata that Bach wrote. Comes from a wrestling match in the Bible when Jacob and the angel of the Lord wrestle all night, and Jacob literally fights him to a standstill. And when the angel wants to split the scene at the break of day, he says, "I ain't letting you go nowhere, man, until you bless me." I don't know. I figured that I don't know. Bach might have gotten into pro wrestling. Who knows? Anyway, that's one of my silly suppositions, as well as sort of a diatribe on what I think is sort of an interesting, at least coincidence, creative coincidence, that might not necessarily be coincidental in the career of J.S. Bach. All right, that's it for now. Talk with you soon, and see you later. Bye for now.